going to go through some slides. We'll do some slides, and then I'm going to actually jump into Synergi Electric and show you some of the things directly in the product that we've been working on. All right, so first off, thank you all very much. And I want to echo what Ron was saying. We know it's a long trip for a lot of you all. It's just kind of an out-of-the-way place. Hopefully you feel like it's worth it. It's just a beautiful setting out here. And so thanks for coming. And we know you have choices. So my wife and I were out at this place a couple days ago. And anybody been there? Do you guys know where this is? There's a Paulina National Park up here. And there's a crater about 8,000 feet. And then down from that crater is this big lake. And you hike around to the back of the lake. And there's a community shovel, of course. And you take that shovel and you dig this pit. And so coming in from the left side is just hot water. And you have to manage the water flow from the lake to keep the water at a nice temperature. So you build a dam, usually with a log there, and then you just manage that. The water is just incredibly hot. But it's off screen is several cases of Pabst Blue Ribbon, some herbs of different types, you know, so there's just a crowd of folks enjoying that. So if you get a chance, that's a great place to visit. Our vision with Synergi hasn't changed in 25 years. You know, we're trying to provide the best tools that we can to help you do your job, to do the engineering functions that are important to you. And that changes. You know, the things like Julio Romero was saying that you all are dealing with are changing on a daily basis. And so we need to make sure that our product is keeping up with that, helping you save time, giving you credibility, helping you justify and support your engineering conclusions. And so it has to cover a lot of different areas of engineering. It's got to be easy to use. It has to be approachable. And that's a big challenge. And so the area on the left, I'm going to have to mute this, I think. Just a second. It is on mute.
No, that's me.
Maybe you need to mute yours then. The area on the left is crucial, and you know, we want to hear from you all. We try to listen very carefully, take lots of notes. You know, I'll probably have 20 pages of notes at the end of the week, and we do work to implement those things. We always hear great ideas, and so our software has to work for some of your utilities. You have, you know, 6,000 to 8,000 feeders, and others will have a dozen feeders. So it's got to be usable, scalable, and meet the needs for engineers in all these different situations. So where are we going? It's another place you should go. I think if you're on the bike trip tomorrow, you might end up here at Benham Falls. Just gorgeous. But this kind of a roadmap. You know, where are we going with Synergi Electric? This is a screenshot. It's very hard to read, but it comes from an excellent book that I was reading on the flight up here. Practical Guidance for Defining a Smart Grid Modernization Strategy. And if you've probably been to Mr. Olusky, he's been around for a long time. He talks a lot at IEEE meetings. And so he co-wrote this book. It's from the World Bank, and it's not very big, but it's just a great overview of what smart grid means to power distribution. And some of the scary things in there for us, you know, things like demand side management, time of use rates, AMI, you know, all these sorts of things. We have to be able to account for that in our software, because Synergi is going to be of no value to you if your system is operating one way and our simulations are operating another way. So a big theme for this year is how are we going to deal with these changes, and how are we going to represent this stuff in Synergi. This is from the same book, another excellent diagram that just shows all these technologies. And of course, you're not going to have a substation like this. But, you know, I look through this diagram, and all these technologies, we have clients who are dealing with these things today. And so we have to be able to account for this stuff in Synergi. because all these different utilities, all of you all are experimenting, piloting, or implementing these technologies. So it's a big deal. And we feel like we are in a leadership role for analytics and distribution system simulation. These are areas where we've been doing a lot of work in the last few years. Of course, DER, hosting capacity, PV. I'm going to talk about storage a lot. It's a big deal. Integrated resource planning. We have several large utilities who are doing formal IRP work, and we're involved with that, both on the consulting side and on the product side. And many of our consultant friends outside of DNVGL who are here are also working on IRP. So having the tools in place to represent your system over the long haul to do these formal plans is crucial. Of course, smart grid, customer behavior. That's we were talking at lunch about this. How do we capture the way that consumers are going to be responding to market conditions, to changing loading situations, to voltage issues, and when you have third parties coming in and managing customers, we have to be able to deal with that. Advanced switching, and of course the cloud and engineering automation, which we'll talk a lot about this week on the automation side. So there's lots of areas of distribution engineering. These are several screenshots out of Synergi Electric, and different screens here will look familiar to many of you. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in Synergi, and Julio was talking about how DER analysis, hosting capacity, those things are going to be mainstream. So they're not today. They're special. There's a lot of attention on these, but tomorrow they just need to be a routine part of what you do as a distribution engineer. And so all that stuff is just going to fall into another screen here in Synergi, and we'll be dealing with the next big issue in power distribution simulation. All these devices, you guys know all this stuff, and there's new devices coming into the market all the time. Julio showed some of those in his presentation. We have to be able to model those. The edge devices are particularly challenging because they're so numerous, and they do all these incredible things. And so these are very specific areas where you have very specific things happening with customers. That's a lot of detail that we're going to have to be modeling. So then we have this data entropy, and I always bring this slide up. The text is changing. It's getting simpler every year. And the bottom line is that we have all this data, and what we see is that typically it does create more uncertainty and less confidence. So the world outside of distribution engineering, there's a lot of pressure to put all this stuff in, do all these second by second simulations over an 8760, but then what do you do with all that information? So our job is to try to help you make sense of it. And we want the image on the left. You're the engineer. We're providing the tools. That's what we're trying to do. The stuff on the right, where we have machines and all this stuff is automatic, we have to support that as well. But we're definitely not losing sight of the stuff on the left. We're a business to support people and humans and to help you do your job. And so the automation is important, but it's certainly not central. So here's a scale slide where we're dealing with, from substations all the way down to customers. If you were here at our meeting last year, we had a guest speaker who was talking about appliance level modeling. So it can get even more detailed than that. And we're dealing with second by second simulations. With IRP, now we've got years that are becoming more important for modeling. Uh-oh. For some reason my let's try this again. So these are some kind of high points of Synergi and why we think it is state of the art. And that doesn't mean that we've got all the problems solved. We have lots of problems, lots of issues, bugs and things, but we're moving ahead. And with Synergi today, you can do second-by-second simulations, and you can do 10-year planning studies. And you can see the model size. And we do have utilities using Synergi with 10,000 or more feeders. We can model from the customer level all the way up to transmission. And we have automation and integration that works for all sorts of solutions. You can run Synergi Electric from the desktop, just engineering applications, and there's all sorts of flavors for time-based studies, batch analysis. This EA automation, we'll talk a lot about that, how you can automate Synergi to generate all sorts of results, put them into a big data mart, and then use that data mart to feed other systems. Solver is our programming API, and we have Noel here from Dominion who's going to talk about that later in the week, what they're doing with it. Lots of you all are using Python, and particularly consultants, and Python is a great application, lots of capabilities, and so it's very popular. And then we have our own macro language. On the DER side, the different flavors of load flow are, we're working through that with you all. And of course, traditionally it was a peak analysis. And now we have all these sorts of different time range analysis all the way up to 8760. We have lots of DER applications to look at your PV situation in different ways. And then hosting capacity, we have 3 flavors of that we'll talk about tomorrow. And so this is over the last year, since our last user conference. And so we've had releases in October, March, and September. We work as hard as we can. We hope to have 6.4 out in September. So that'll be soon after this meeting. But the pie chart is showing where the ideas, where the work is coming from. So that lower left pie, those are 10 utilities within our client base are providing about 1/4 of the drivers for what we do in Synergi. So they're utilities are very active and have a lot of good ideas, engaging, and so on. Then we've got about 1/4 of the work is from other utilities, and then that stuff on the right, that's from us, but we're not sitting in a vacuum. That's because we're out talking to clients and doing things. So you've got Frank Ellis, who's here, and Johnny Flynn, and Alan is probably online, who are doing things with you all and feeding those ideas back into Synergi Electric. So that 50% is really sponsored by you all, even though it's tagged as DNBGL work. These are the focus areas, and the user interface is 1/4 of that.
Well, we had sound and then it died.
I'm amazed that that's coming out of my speaker because I thought it was on mute.
The session is dropped, then he opened, right?
I don't know.
How do I? See, I can hear it. You can quickly.
Sorry. The live stream is this is our first, like Kyle was saying, and kudos to Kyle here because this is going to be a great tool for us down the road. Yeah, that's right. So the GUI, that's about 1/4 of the work that we do, and Neil is back here. It's critical, and it's when I talk to people about Synergi Electric development, more than half of what we do is data management, user interface, presentation. This stuff it's got to make sense. You have to be confident in it. The software has to be something that you can sit down and use, because all of you are doing all sorts of other things. You have dozens of other jobs you have to do besides running Synergi. So the user interface is an area where we put a lot of work. And we've got contingency analysis, which is we're going to be putting a lot of effort into that this coming year. It's always there. Contingency is an application that's always going to be under development. Protection stuff, from version 5 to version 6, we did a huge amount of work on protection, and now we're refining that and improving it. You can see the DER stuff there. Integration. I'm going to talk about secondary in a minute here. So that's the different areas of Synergi where we've been putting our work in. Goodness, now I can't change. There we go. So EA automation, this is the model for that. Synergi Electric sits here, runs applications automatically for your entire system and puts results into a database. And then that database can feed other systems. So it couldn't be simpler. And it's a way that you can just do a huge amount of analysis on your entire system. Then the data lake, it's another thing that we've been working on for several years, but we've got it really nailed down. I think the user interface looks great. The functionality is solid. And the idea is that you have all these systems that are pulling data in and out of somewhere in your utility, and they call that the data lake. It's area where you have loosely related information. And so we can take Synergi Electric and we can connect to that and pull data into Synergi. So a common area is feeder demands, PV sizes and locations, large loads, those types of things we can pull out of the data lake. So it's a very popular area. This, I won't read through all these, but these are where we're doing a lot of analytic work. And so hosting capacity, impact studies, generation plus storage, and then secondary modeling. Microgrids is in there as well. So we've been doing work and we have a lot more to do. And then Windows 10 is, Windows 10 is great in my opinion. I mean, I like it on my home computers, our work computers. Our IT group within DMVGL is just incredible. And so we have Windows 10 machines. We've been developing on Windows 10 for probably 2.5, 3 years now. But what we're seeing is that these Windows 10 updates come out, and some utilities, things happen. So one large utility had a font removed in their Windows 10 update. And so Synergi was crashing because of this missing font. So bear with us. We're doing all that we can to track down these issues, but a lot of times it's not Synergi things that are happening. Or sometimes they are mistakes that Neil and I have made, but they just didn't show up until now. So Windows 10 is, and we're going to get it all ironed out, but there are issues that are coming up. Okay, so let's get going with Synergi here. Enough of the PowerPoint, and let's see, I don't need that. Get rid of some of these windows. Well, let me show you this thing now that I started. Hopefully you know this is here, but if you don't, when you start Synergi Electric, let me close this. If you hold down the control key, so if Synergi is crashing at startup, which we hate to have happen, but it does happen. And then if it crashes at startup, how do you figure out what's going on? What's the problem? If that happens, you hold down the control key and then start Synergi, and you'll get a little menu here. And these are startup, can't read it up there, but they're just different ways to start up Synergi. Maybe you don't load settings, you don't load the model, don't connect to the internet, things like that that you can do to try to at least get Synergi up and running, and then try to figure out what the problem is. We, with the help of the, Neil did a lot of work on this, and with the help of the Synergi Gas team, we resuscitated this email technical support feature here. And if you click on that button, your email will come up with the Synergi model attached, and it'll come to client support. So it'll go to Kevin Jones, and that's a great feature of Synergi. We've been using it, hopefully you have been, for years. And with the one of the Windows 10 updates, it stopped working, but we've got it ironed out. On the support ribbon here, if you're, see who all's on Yammer now? Raise your hand if you, not very many folks, all right. So this is a, so I click on Yammer here, and there is just great chat conversations here, some of a technical nature, talking about Synergi, if you're running into a problem, if you want advice. Here's some stuff about cable calculations and so on. So Kyle is kind of the host of this, but Frank is very involved, and other folks through this Yammer change. So if you can, here's Enda, you'll meet him around here. And so lots of folks on Yammer, a lot of utility folks. And even if you're not talking about Synergi, you might have colleagues at other utilities here. You can, talk shop. So, take a look at Yammer. You might have to, how does somebody register? They send us an email?
Yeah, just, you can go in and request, and then I'll approve it. I'll just kind of match up your email address that you sign up. There are some clients that do block it because it's technically social media. The workaround for that is if you have a cell phone, the app is actually pretty good. So you can use like a personal email and just download the app on your phone. And it's a nice feed that you can get notifications if you want. So really anything that's going on in the ecosystem, if there's a new release, if there's a bug that we found, if there's upcoming training, user seminar, we'll post the PowerPoints out there. So you might find this information duplicated elsewhere, maybe the website, maybe the portal, but probably Yammer, you're going to find it more timely. So I would suggest everyone should sign up there. Plus, it gives you the ability to interact with other users globally. So we've got around 200 users out there now globally. So I would just suggest that try to take a look at it. There's a lot of good information that we've been posting out there for probably 3 years now.
Okay, good. And so this is going to be, I'm going to be jumping around a little bit. I'm hitting some of the high points of the work that we've done recently in Synergi Electric. The release notes are out there, of course, and I think we're at about 65 pages for the last year. So there's a lot of work that's in the product that you can read through. But these are the high points. One of them is the, boy, I'm going to be bumping into this. All right, so one of them is if you go into the Views tab and look at this catalog, this presents your network in a non-geographic way. So you can go through and look at fuses, sections, all sorts of things in Synergi, and this is live. So if you come in here and you make changes, fuse sizes or whatever, all those updates are going to be here. So this is live data off of your model, and this has been in here for a while. We've been doing a lot of work on it, and the reason is that we do have a 64-bit version of Synergi. It's not released yet, but we know that 64-bit is possible. It runs well. It eliminates the memory limitations that you might have on a 32-bit. The challenge that we have is on the map. So this stuff right here, the geographic display, is something that we're having. It's going to be a challenge to get this converted to a 64-bit. So the 64-bit version today will come up with just that tabular view and no map. So there may be situations where that might be useful on a server, or you can do quite a bit of work just off the tabular view. The analysis tab over here, all of these applications sitting up here, these are all forms of load flow. So of course, load flow analysis, and that's that button, that's always been there, right? But we have the 24-hour analysis. So if you want to look at your system performance over a single day, you can run that. You can see, the duck curve and all these sorts of things for a particular day. So this is a August weekday that I've run through. There's a 96. That's going to be 2 days. So you can pick maybe your peak day in summer, your peak day in winter, those sorts of things. And then we have the 576 analysis. And this thing is going to run over a full year. So it's going to analyze the entire year for your model and summarize what's going on in charts. And if you do time of day modeling, I'm sure you've seen these. And we have done more work on the tabular information. So we've got a lot more in a report format that you can dig through. And then, of course, we've got the charts over here to show how the system is behaving throughout the year. And so if you're worried about voltage problems, power factor, losses, all sorts of things you can look at here. And a big thing that we've done is to put in this very subtle run multi-year checkbox. And I apologize for the fuzziness on this thing, but that checkbox, and it's going to run the 576 over a 10-year period. So now we've got a 5,760. And if your model if you have growth modeled, so you've got particular loads, maybe you have growth profiles, some way to show how your system is changing over the coming decade, we'll run through that whole 10-year period, hour by hour, month by month, and then give you all that information. You know, when are you going to have overloads? What year? What month? Where's it going to be? So the 576 over multiple years is a big deal. It doesn't take that long to run. You saw the 1 year didn't take that long, so it's just 10 times that long. Lots of results, and we're looking for feedback on what we should do with that. How we should, what are the next steps on the multi-year. If you are doing time of day modeling, and we go to the time and weather tab, the slide deck that I have on your app, this is blank right here. And so this will be blank on the 6.4 release. And that's the do not adjust for time of day option. What that means then is that Synergi is always going to be in time of day mode. So you're always going to, so we're in September here. We can go to September, weekday, particular time. Your analysis is always going to be time-based. If you don't have any data, if all your profiles and everything is flat, then it doesn't really matter. All right, so if you run a 576, everything's flat, it's a kind of a waste of time. But we're doing that because that's where the industry is going. As Julio was saying, you really have to be looking at this stuff over a time period. He said 8760. We can chat about that over a beer. But the 576 is effectively an 8760 analysis. And I think a lot of you, when you do run analyses, you're not running load flow anymore. You're running these things, the 24, the 576. And so that's what we're trying to go. And our job is to make that more streamlined, the results to make more sense, for things to be cohesive, so that you can get the information you need quickly. And so the do not adjust for time of day is coming out. Then on the time and weather, while I'm here, it's right here, sorry. We did put these sky coverage factors in. So if you want a quick way to run that, it's hard to read, like mostly sunny, partly cloudy, those sorts of things, you can quickly add some clouds to your model just with this drop down. That's a nice thing. Maybe the biggest trend that I think we're creating and that you all are doing is we want to run the model under all these different conditions. So do all those conditions and then tell me where the issues are, when they occur, and how. So this sky coverage factor is a way to at least change the cloud cover. If we go and look at a feeder meter, to get this curve information in, today with Synergi, and we've got two presentations, maybe more, that are going to be talking about this, and some very innovative things that folks have done to get profiles, load behavior into the model. And so today with Synergi, you can go from the ground up. So you can put in customer load information for like electric customers. You can maybe base it on AMI. There's all sorts of ways to get this data from individual customers kind of percolating up. Or you can set up demands at the feeder level, and then you use those demands to govern everything that's connected to that feeder. So there's two ways. And the challenge that I think or the next step is how do we get those two ways to work together so that you can do both without having to run a load allocation every hour? So that's work that we're pondering. If you have ideas, and I know several of you face that now, which way to go, we'll get there together. But from the top down is based on meter demands. And if I go in here to a substation, a feeder, let's take a look at a meter. Sorry, there's one. We've been working on these demand profiles for all the 6.0, 6.1, 6.2 updates, and I think we've got it into a pretty good state right now. You can come in and say, okay, we have active profiles on this meter, and our loads are going to be following a curve like this. So all the loads fed by that feeder are going to be doing that. And Neil just put in a nice tool to be able to pick a customer class and copy that into a meter demand profile. So that may bridge a gap for some of you, because you might have customer class data and you want to use that class for an entire feeder. So this is a quick way to copy that in. Let me talk about this just briefly here, because there's two curves on the meter. And so this first one here, this demand profile, this is going to be SCADA data that you've actually recorded on your system. Maybe it comes from Pi or some other system. So this is going to be the raw data out of that. And it's great to have it in Synergi. You can relate to it. You know where it comes from. And so you can feel comfortable engineering-wise that this is good stuff. The load profile is copied from that by default. So when you pull that data into Synergi, this load profile is a copy of that data. There are tools in Synergi to massage this load profile. And why would you want to do that? Well, my demand on my feeder, if I have a bunch of PV, if I've got a feeder with a high PV penetration, it may look like this. And this is certainly not the way that my loads are going to operate on that feeder. And so we need some way to take this data and generate a load profile. And so those tools are in the 576 analysis. And we'll talk about it a little more tomorrow. But they're going to go in and add the generation into the demand profile to get a load profile. So that's an important step if you have high penetration feeders and you want to use this profile tool. Another thing to mention is that with CMM, if you're pulling in customers that have rooftop, you might have negative kWh values. And we have a similar type of tool in CMM that uses your solar irradiance profile, your solar profile. So it'll use this for your latitude and longitude to estimate the amount of energy that a customer would produce, and then adjust the kilowatt hours. So it'll add that generation value into the kilowatt hours so that you get a more accurate load value for that customer. So it's very simple here in Synergi. I know Skip and folks at Clean Power Research have very sophisticated tools for doing a great job with this. Their data can feed into Synergi Electric, and I think some of you are already using that system. Okay, now let's get into this big one. So where am I at? I've got 50 minutes, right? All right. Okay. Oh, sorry. Secondary modeling is, I imagine it's a concern. It's something that all of you are talking about, and certainly we're talking about it a lot. Our consultant group, Angie Arnitsky, is going to come up later and talk to you all. But I know the folks that work with her, it's important area. It's new. You know, it's just recently that we've had to worry so much about getting customer data into the model. And it's been a progression with Synergi. Let me show you where we are now. Some significant improvements in my mind. So a year ago at the user conference here, if we had looked at the, and I guess I'm assuming everybody uses Synergi and you kind of know where I'm at, but I clicked on a section, and then this is the distribution transformer tab. So that list, those are all the distribution transformers that are on that line section. For a lot of you, you're just going to have one transformer. A lot of your models, your sections are broken at the transformer, so there's usually no more than one transformer, but some utilities have multiples. A year ago, there would have been 2 more tabs on there, and it would have been more details about the generation and the load. We've taken that off, so you can no longer put loads or generation on distribution transformers. So this is only going to operate as a transformer now. You can put service information over here. So if you have secondary conductors, different sorts of layouts, that goes over here. This is pretty rare. I don't think a lot of utilities would want to go into this, but it's certainly there if you want to use it. But the transformer impedance is a big deal, so that we can account for the losses and the voltage drop through the transformer. So a lot of your utilities, you've got millions of these. So it's a big deal to get the data in. We are working as hard as we can to make the data as simple, the presentation as simple as we can. So it's pretty subtle here. You have to open up the section editor, go into this tab to find these. So the loads are gone, the generation is gone. If I go to the customer tab now, this is a list of all the customers on that transformer. And this customer now, we've got load, biphase data. It's all biphase. It used to be balanced values. We've got generation data sitting over here. So I can turn on a generator. This customer's got a battery on it, so we can run generation. We've got rooftop KW, and we also have battery KW. And we absolutely understand that there's not a lot of you that are going to have the details, maybe even for the customer period, certainly for the battery sizes. But we want to stay, we want to keep ourselves in a position where you can feed the data in if you have it, and we want to be in a position where we can listen to your feedback, adjust our model, and improve this thing, so when you do need it, everything's going to be in good shape and running for you. So that's why we're trying to stay ahead of the game on the battery stuff, because it seems like it's going to be coming. And a lot of you, I imagine, already have customers with battery storage here. So it's in. And then on the behavior tab, this is where we're going to have demand response and those sorts of things set up. So it's pretty simple for customers, but there is a lot of data for individual customers. So when you pull a model in through CMM, you might have been previously having the loads set up on the transformers. What's going to happen now is you're going to get a single customer that's going to be an aggregate customer on that transformer. So it'll be a customer representing all customers on the transformer. So if there's 4 customers, there'll be an aggregate here. The customer count, this number would be a 4 in that case. You may be in a position to model each customer, and so you can do that. Or what we see a lot of clients doing is they will model all the customers with rooftop individually, and then customers that do not have any DER get aggregated as a single value. So there's lots of options there. We want to understand what you're trying to do, what the demands are for you all as engineers, your processes, and then we're going to make Synergi work to help you out. We don't want to dictate this because you all are the experts. So secondary analysis is a big deal. We're going to be working on this a lot over the coming year, and I'm sure years after that. If you all have questions or comments, just holler too. I mean, you all know this is a very informal. Yeah, yeah. I believe we do, yes. Yeah, so the question was, do we have a data mart import? We don't for customers, I'm sorry. We don't, because there's just too many, but we can put one in. So the data mart is over here on the Forge ribbon. And the Forge, this is where we have all the data processing, model building, just the crunching of stuff to develop models is on Model Forge tab. And so the data lake tool is here. And the schema, these are all the things that we can pull in. So we can pull in generation from customers and so on. We do have customer loads on here. So I think, I don't know, I'll have to check this out. But if not, if you need it, we can put it in there. And I brought this up because this list is, the framework for this is better than last year, and this list is longer because you all are telling us things that you want to bring in through the data lake, and we're putting in the schema for it. So these are all data lake schemas. And when you go to run data lake, you click on this button and you say, okay, I want to import my data from a spreadsheet or a database or a text file. No matter where the data comes from, it's the same schema. So this is where we pull it in. So it's a very effective tool. Consultants, our consultants use this a lot, and we also integrate with third parties with the data lake. And it's just a great way to move data back and forth. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes.
So when we compare our data, does it matter if we use spot load or distribution load or partial custom?
When you import your data for
Or load data, so you know how you click on, like when you put it loading, it can either be put in spot load, customer load, spot load, distribution load, partial custom.
right.
Does it matter, like, if you don't put in one or the other, there's certain functions you can't use?
Yeah, if you do not need to do secondary modeling, then I would put all of your customers in as distributed loads, and then any sort of metered customer. So oftentimes it's a commercial customer, something like that, you would put in as a spot value. So it's kind of the way it's always been. But if you're going to do secondary modeling, everything would come in as customers, and I don't think you'll want to use distributed load. So that's with the data. And what we want to do is we're going to have the capability so that if you bring all of your data in as customers, we'll be able to collect that data and set a distributed load value for you. So we're getting into a lot of the details here, but you should be able to run a primary analysis that's consistent with analysis that includes a secondary. And we're going to make sure that both of those work together well. That's a good question, though, about why are we doing secondary modeling? There's lots of reasons. One is because the customers are the ones that they're your customers, and so if there's a problem with voltage for a customer, you want to be able to see that in your simulations. So we need to be able to analyze, include the secondary, and determine if there's a high voltage or a low voltage at a customer. Another reason is that these inverters, these solar rooftop systems, are going to be driven by the customer's voltage. So if we use the primary voltage, it's probably not going to be operating correctly if you have like a volt bar system or something like that at the customer. So now we do have the voltage at the customer. We can model the PV system better. The third reason is for losses. If I run an analysis and I just have primary included, a system like this, I will probably get about 1% loss. If I go down to the secondary, now all of a sudden my losses will probably be 8%. It's a huge increase in losses. As far as amps go, my current flow is going to be the same. The difference is in the way that we tally up the losses. Because if I have 50 kW on this section, and it's all primary analysis, it's 50 kW. It's 50 kW of load. But if I take that 50 kW and spread it down to the customers, now I've got the transformer losses. I could have the secondary line losses. So even though I see 50 kW at the primary, the customers may only be getting 45 kW, and I've got 5 kW of losses. So you're going to see a big change in the losses when you do this. So that's a good thing, because if you're doing CVR, if you're trying to justify a capacitor, those types of things, you're going to have much better numbers for that, much more realistic, and so it's good. But we do, yeah.
It's totally based on the
That's right. And if you model the secondary lines, you can do that. So you can put in, and what we're telling folks to do is some sort of a engineering guesstimate about what the secondary service would be for a customer in a particular area. So like the folks up here at Sun River, you know, they're probably like 20-foot drops of number 2 or something like that. And so you can just generalize that, or you could just not put in a secondary. It does not, and that's a great point. We want to get to the secondary and arc flash, but it's not there yet. Yeah. Yep. So let me show you on the model options here. This little M on the bottom, hard to see, but I'm in the habit of clicking on that for model options. But you can also go to the model tab, model button, and there is a secondary tab right here. And you can say, do not model secondary, or do transformers and customers. And so it should be very easy to flip back and forth. And we may, along with you, we may collectively decide that we're just always going to model secondary. And you either have the data or you don't. But today you can switch back and forth, so that if you do have loads at the distribution, at the distributed load level, if you do have load values here, you can use those. You can see this is grayed out. And the reason this is grayed out is I have my model options set to do secondary. If I switch that to do just primary, then I'm not going to, this is going to be active, so I can make edits here.
Can you use your customers on secondary data to fill in that distribution?
Yes, well, yeah. I've got to check the state of it, but yeah, so the question was, can you use customers to fill this in? And that's what I was rambling around trying to say, is we want to have that tool there to do that for you. And I need to check to see how well it works, because we need to make sure it works. And so
Larry, in the secondary modeling, load allocation basically goes away. You don't have to do a load allocation anymore?
Yeah, so the question was about load allocation, which is I think that's a perfect segue to the next topic. That's great, Kelly. Yeah. So load allocation. That's over here on the planning tab, load allocation here. And we have done some work on these settings over here. Yesterday during our roundtable chat, we were talking about capacitors. So we have some new options over here to just allocate real power and hold power factors. There's different options here for the way to treat the power factor on customers. And that is all in there because so many of us don't know the state of capacitors. And if the state is wrong, if the capacitor states are inconsistent with your demands, then you end up punishing your customers with heavy power factor swings. And so this approach, I think several of you have helped us with this, and it's a way to just allocate real power and set the power factor to some level. But I come in here, most of load allocation is the same. There are some new features here and there. But one thing you'll notice, and this is going to be a big deal, is this action area right here. And so you can update allocation factors and you can allocate loads. What we've done is we have broken load allocation up into two pieces. These pieces have always been there. And if you come to our loads class, we get into this in great detail. we go through and we calculate these factors, these proportionality factors, based on if you can use connected kVA, existing power, there's customer count, there's all sorts of ways you can do that. It's actually in this list here. All sorts of ways that you can set up the relationship between loads in your system so that we can allocate them. The first step here is going to calculate those allocation factors. The second step is going to use those factors to calculate the loads. If I go into a, let me go and switch this thing back to primary here. If I go into a distributed load here, at the bottom of this, you'll see this allocation row that we added. And those are the allocation factors. They're factors, they're unitless. They're just there to determine the proportional load layout between different loads. So when you run load allocation, let's say we're running allocation to allocate by connected kVA. When we run allocation, we would see this number is a 35 on phase A. We would see a 35 down here for the allocation factor. If the next section over had a 70 for connected kVA, we would see a 70 here. When the loads got allocated, one load would be twice as big as the other. So it's just a very simple proportional approach. But the big deal is that this number is now exposed and it's stored in the model. So it's very, very doable for you to go in and set these allocation factors yourself. Maybe you have economists, analysts, GIS folks, people who are doing demographics and things like that on customers, and you can set these allocation factors based on all sorts of things. And when you do that, you could come into load allocation here and say, don't update the factors. Just use the factors that I have to allocate my loads. So that's a possibility. And I think going forward, folks are going to be doing that. But if you have both of these checked, load allocation works the same ways that it always has, except now you can actually see those allocation factors on the loads. So you see we have the primary up here, and then we have it's a little deep here, but if we only had customers on our model, we could allocate primary loads based on customer information. So that's what all this secondary stuff is. So if I wanted to allocate my distributed loads based on my customer count on the secondary, I can do that. So there's a whole suite of options here for that, using customer data, which would be at the secondary level, to allocate my primary loads. And I don't know if you'd want to do that or not. I think some of you would. It's just a matter of where your data is, what you're trying to do with it, so those options are in place. And then if you do have secondary modeling turned on, there's the allocation options for customers. So you can allocate by transformer size, customer count, all sorts of things at the customer level as well. So load allocation runs all the way down to the customer. I think I'm doing, where am I at here? I've got in half an hour? Yeah, okay. Okay. So tomorrow and the next day we have a hands-on lab. So you all will have laptops. It's a great facility. We did it last year. I thought it was just awesome. So we'll all sit down. We'll go through some exercises. We're going to be doing PV, hosting capacity, some of the DER applications, things like that. But if there's things that you all want to do, talk to us at over a beer or something later, and we're happy to integrate whatever you want to do into tomorrow's work. But I'm going to jump over to a very important area here. If I've got customers on my model, and I go in here to the generation tab, turn on the generation, and I've got a DERP, distributed energy resource program. And let's pick on one that's like NEM, so net energy metering. for some utilities, that means non-export. So what we've done in Synergi is we have created this resource program. It's in the warehouse. It's the so if I go into something like to a NIM here, there's not a lot on this edit box. It's very vacant, and that's because we're geared up to work with you all, start putting in the settings. This is where the behavior, the contract stuff is going to come into play. So this is a net energy customer, and if we wanted to make them non-export, we would check that. And then there's another option here to allow power import for battery charging, which I would think if I owned a battery, I'm not going to buy energy from PPL to charge my battery, right? I would, if I had a solar, I have neither of these, but if I had a solar panel, then I'd want the solar panel to charge my battery. But you know, some of the stuff that Julio talked about, you may have a large facility where they may want to charge their battery with grid power. So these are some examples of options that we have. These things are functioning now. And the non-export, we've got several clients who are ready to put that into play right now. And so this means that if I've got a generator and my generation is picking up during the middle of the day, my load is down, we're just not going to export power. It's going to clip that off. And then we go from there to the next big one, which is Gen plus storage. Now, this is not going to be in your copy of Synergi tomorrow. Everything I've done so far, we'll be able to fiddle with tomorrow if you want. This next one here is brand new. It will be in the 6.4 update. But if I look at this guy right here, it's a large. I'm looking at a large customer. This would be like a warehouse. If you live where I live, there's warehouses everywhere, and they've got a rooftop solar. So I'm on the generation tab. It's constructed and so on. The inverter, you can set all that up. We can now go into the warehouse and look at the generators here. And you can see here's a commercial rooftop plus storage. So now we've got PV plus storage sitting here. And it's as simple as that. We've got PV plus storage. If we have storage in other situations, we can add the storage ability. And then if we go back to this customer and we pick that rooftop plus storage, now all of a sudden we can turn on our battery. You can see we can set the rating for this thing. So we can come in and say, well, we've got maybe 100 kW on the battery. Maybe it is good for 10. I'm going to mess up these numbers. How about 10,000? That's a lot, isn't it? So 1,000 kilowatt hours. And then you can make a charge, discharge. These battery settings have been in Synergi. The generation stuff has been in Synergi. What's new for 6.4 is the battery and the storage together. And so the question is that, okay, how do these two things operate? We are tracking the energy on the battery. When you run time series, when you run the single day analysis like I did, the 576, we're tracking the energy on the battery. And it might end up depleting itself. It may reach its maximum energy level. So we're tracking that along. What do we do then if the battery is full and the PV levels are low? If that customer is consuming power, should we discharge the battery to feed that customer? If the PV generation is high and the load is low, so we have an excess PV, what should we do with that excess? Well, we should probably charge the battery. So those kind of intuitive things, if you go to auto, the battery is going to operate like that. So if there is a net load, the battery will discharge. If we have an excess generation, the battery will charge. We know it's going to get more complicated than that. And so the DER profile, this is where you can set up a time of day curve. So like this battery schedule, you can set this up to show how the how this battery is going to charge and discharge throughout the day. So each month you can set up a schedule like this for charging and discharging. It's I was telling folks at dinner yesterday, it's been like a black hole for quite a while in development on this, because it's just endless possibilities. And so software wise, our job is to put a box around this, make it usable, try to make sense of it all, and to build it in a way that we can move it forward and do the things that you need to do. So we've got the start in here, and we're going to keep moving this ahead with your input. So the engineering side of me, my mind is just blown by all the incredible things that battery plus PV can do. So I have no doubt that as batteries become less expensive and more capable, that it's just going to be just another explosion, I think, of technology and of attention and things going on in distribution with all the stuff that can be done with generation plus storage. And Neil's going to be talking about this tomorrow. Neil, yeah. So Neil is very impressed. He's an expert on batteries and has got a lot of insight into this stuff. Okay, so on the support ribbon under technical reference, we've got all this stuff in Synergi. Now, how do we show you, and how do we share how to use these tools? So we have finally completed an overhaul of the technical reference. And so when you open up the tech ref, you get this framework, and you can come into different areas, and it's all presented in a nice, clean way. We still have redundant data. We still have lots of gaps. We've got a lot of work to do to get content put into this, but it's structured well, and I think we have a nice table of contents. This has been in here for maybe a year, maybe more. The reason we put this together, and Neil did just a fantastic job of building this tool, and it's great because this is a PDF of a Word document. We can come in here, you can see the symbols are different. This is a slide deck. We've got all sorts of different symbols over here. We can have videos, all sorts of content. We had stuff scattered everywhere before, and this framework allows us to put everything together, group it, so that we can start to get rid of the redundant information, make things more concise, and make it so that you can find things easier. So it's coming along really well. The seminar tab, you can come in here. This is a slide deck that we use for training. So please come to our training class, but when you get back, if you want to share this with colleagues, you can come in here and use the slide deck. And this is new, and Frank, I was talking to you about this during lunch. We're working on these procedures, and these are one page. It's a little hard to see on the display here, but this is like a one-page placemat. And there was a fellow from oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the utility now. It'll come to me in a minute. Who retired, and he was sending these out for all sorts of concepts in power distribution. It was great. This idea of a placemat kind of stuck in my head, and so what we're trying to do here is give you a single page that covers a topic. We're coming at this like you have some Synergi experience, so we're not going into every little detail, every little step. We're hitting all the high points so that hopefully you can follow along. So this one here is if you're going to do DER modeling, what do you need to do? So we've got 4 steps, all the way down to putting in your latitude and longitude so you can get the right solar power. So we're going to be working on this, and we think this is going to play a big role in our training. And Kyle's going to be talking about a lot of stuff we're doing in training tomorrow, right? Yeah. Okay. So a lot of exciting things, and we're trying to work on this as things come up. When you call us or email, you might get one of these from us, because we'll take a question and say, well, let's just do it this way, send it to you all, and then we'll have it there for everybody. So the next, you can go to our portal, download the technical reference zip file, unzip it on your machine, and you've got all this stuff. So hopefully you like it. I think it's a good direction to go. And that was the procedures. On the user interface, on the views, these worksheets up here are great. This is a new one. Neil's done these. This is a customer worksheet. This is on our sample model. We don't have that many customers. We've got some models where there'll be thousands of customers. And this thing works great for sorting them, looking at the details. You can double click, all sorts of edits you can do. So the customer worksheet. And when you run load flow, you'll get results over here for low voltages, things like that. So we want to do the customer modeling without a lot of clutter on the map. And so the worksheet is very good for that. If you don't use these tools in this little bank here, take a look at them. They're great. Here's a DER worksheet. You can click on it and go to these different generators in the system. It could be a large, it could be a solar farm, it could be a residential. And we've got some information about how that thing is operating that you can use. And we're always open to feedback on that. So these worksheets are great. You have multiple monitors. We're stuck on one monitor here, but if you don't use those, take a look at that. Another tool that we've been working on is this charting. And I was thinking last night that over the years I've had 11 managers. So I've worked for 11 different people, and I don't know if that's a typical value. Some of you all have been in your jobs for many years. I don't know but some of them have really, been great, very memorable. But one manager that I had years ago, he would come in and say, we're not in the charting business, and that's right, we're not. And so our charts here are very basic. If you want to do sophisticated charts, then go over here to Synergi, run an analysis like let's just run a load flow. Go to the results tab and just dump this out into Excel. So you can come over here, open an Excel, and you're going to have all sorts of data down to full precision. So lots of decimals, and you can make some beautiful charts in Excel. But there's times where you just need to be able to do a quick chart in Synergi, and so one of these would be for voltage plots. So you can open this chart view, hit biphase volts, hit that arrow, and now you've got a voltage plot. And I think we'll play with this more tomorrow. It's the before and after effect that you want to see a lot of times, and there's some neat stuff you can do with these charts. On the results annotation, I'm going to go to close all to close my reports here. Oh, I'll show you a new way to do this. I end up with a lot of tabs up here, and I don't like that. So Neil put in this, you can right click on this on the light bulb, close all reports. So that's nice. The annotation now, I rarely go into the display settings anymore, and that's a great thing. So if I want to annotate numbers on the map, I can go in and do a text label. We won't get into all that, but you can add these sorts of numbers. You can bring up the floating boxes for like results boxes. I was having dinner with somebody last night, and they had some really good suggestions on some customized reports. Tell Synergi what you want to see, and then Synergi's just go and run whatever analyses are necessary to give you that set of data. So I think we can do something with that. But this came from a customer. It's a great idea. And then on the results tab, if you want to annotate the model, you can just go in here, find the result that you want to see on the screen, right click on it, and just do an annotate. And then the numbers are going to be on the model, annotated for you. And then you can kind of fiddle with that on the display settings. You can go over here and turn off different slots. You can turn off results. There's some tools up here that you can use for working with that annotation. And I'll turn that off. Now, I'm not sure, we're wired now on the internet? Yeah, this should work okay then. Are we on Wi-Fi?
Wireless.
Okay, let's give this a shot then. I get questions, probably several a week, about how to do hosting capacity in Synergi. And we're going to talk a lot about this tomorrow. Hosting capacity should be bread and butter, should be no effort. We should just do it, all right? The question is, how much generation can I put at a location without causing a problem? That's a fundamental thing that a product like ours should be able to do. And so, of course, we put a lot of effort into that. And see if this thing will move out of the way for me. The DER tab, if you want to run hosting capacity, you come up here to the incremental. We do a heat map. So I'm going to run hosting capacity analysis. It gives me my results. And then if I want a heat map, then I just go to the Gen Max megawatts, and there we go. And I've done this on so many of your models. Just last week I was working with somebody's model that was from 2012. I mean, it was an old model, and it works just fine. And now we've got work to do. There's a lot of stuff that we do in hosting capacity. We're handling substations, switch caps, tap changers, all sorts of things. But let me talk about two things that we need to do. Zero sequence impact, so ground fault currents impact. I think a lot of you have 10% thresholds on that. And then relay desensitization. So both of those are on the protection side. We'll get that in there. And then and there's other things. The next big step for us on hosting capacity is to account for switching. So it's a marriage of contingency analysis and hosting capacity. And that's going to be a big one, because I know a lot of you all have rules about, so it's not so much about the engineering analysis, it's about rules that you have in place. So we have to capture that. And some of you all have systems where you actually turn off the PV system if there's an alternate switching situation. So there's a lot of stuff we're going to have to deal with on that. Anyway, so we've got, here's a question. Yep. So the heat map would be for any section. So this is anywhere. So if I go to this section right here, and I'll bring up the pie chart. So don't forget about that. The pie chart here, this blue section is about, half a megawatt or so. And I can click on the section to see the exact value. But that means I can put a half a megawatt on that section without creating a problem. So it's every single section. It's like the incremental cost. So if I were to go in and put in a 1 megawatt generator up here, really I should rerun the incremental hosting on everything, because it's going to impact everything. So incremental is not a feeder level hosting capacity, it's individual sections. And we have some others that are feeder level we'll talk about tomorrow. But what I want to show you here is mapping. And we talk about this a lot with clients. The mapping tools we have in Synergi are great for the engineer. And if you want to publish on your intranet, we have solutions to provide the data with EA automation that I talked about before. We can run the analysis and set the data up there. And then it's up to you to put it up into whatever your map solution is for the web. And but if you're on your desktop, we can come in here and open this in Google Earth. See how this works here. So Neil did just a phenomenal job of kind of connecting the dots. So we had a lot of capabilities in Synergi and connected it all together. And so now you can leverage these great mapping capabilities of Google Earth. You can get in here, and so we've got client models where you can see these lines. You can see the solar panels on the roofs. Just beautiful. And So using Google Earth is a great way. But again, this isn't published for your customers. This is really for the engineer. You can take a screenshot and all that. But we want to hear more about, if you do want to publish maps, can we help with that? And we can help you use Synergy, but if you need to go up and if you need somebody to come in and do the mapping and set up the IT stuff, we need to learn about what those needs are, and maybe we can help eventually. It did, yeah. We have a, if your Google Earth uses lat long, and I won't go into it here, but on the forge ribbon, this thing will slide back up there. On the forge ribbon, on the database hammer, you pick a database. This would be your model database, and we have a lat long conversion tool here for you. It'll take your XYs and convert them to lat long. So if your GIS is not doing that for you, then there is a tool in Synergy to help with that. Okay, this is a nice one, and it's work that we've done, and we're going to. So these are the model options. Down here on the analysis, on the fixes, the fixes tab. So this is refreshing because we're getting back to something that we did years ago. This has been in here for a long time. But computers are so powerful now, and we've learned a lot. We've been at this for, 20, 23 years. So we know a lot more now than we did. And we have, we're putting in these fixes, and a couple of these are new. So a client talked to us about the fact that they have 2 meters on every feeder, and one of them is really bogus. And so what we did was we come into the fixes tab, and we added this tool right in here. So if you check that, whenever it sees that situation, it will delete that bogus meter for you. So only that one customer is probably going to need that, but there's some other ones in here that you all might be able to use. So this has been in here for a long time. You may not have noticed it, but what we're going to do is start adding more capabilities here. So I know that it is redundant with the cleanup scripts. We have all of that stuff. There's dozens, maybe 100 or so cleanup script commands. But the nice thing about this is that you don't have to script anything. You just turn it on, and it'll do it for you. So a return to the fixes here. All right, so a lot of these DER applications we're going to talk about tomorrow, and so I'm going to leave that. But I do want to talk about a change that's going to affect some of you all in the room here. You shouldn't see a change from it, but let me think about where it is. Yeah, it's right here, sorry. This is a section editor, and we used to have a checkbox. It was called Allow PV, I think it was. And so when we're running hosted capacity, it would allow you could go in and mark off areas where you would never have PV connected. So you could and it would just save time. That way Synergy doesn't have to do the hosted capacity analysis on those sections. What we did was we took that from a true-false value and we made it into a decimal. And so now it represents a likelihood of PV. We're not doing anything now. We still use it as a true-false. So that's either, if it's not 0, then that means we could put PV there. But moving forward, we're going to use that as a way to place PV in different areas. So tomorrow we'll look at a lot of these things like the gens and loads application, where we can come in and just stick a bunch of PV on your system. Today it's kind of uniform, but when we use that likelihood of PV, now that'll give us a tool to maybe put PV in areas where it's more likely to be installed. So where does that likelihood come from? maybe your GIS folks, your analytics group, you would come from economic, demographic, historical, all sorts of stuff that it might come from. I don't know, folks at CPR might have ways to get that number set well. So it's exciting because that's a big struggle, is when we're looking ahead for forecasting, what ifs, all these things with PV, how do we know where to put it? Well, this is going to be a tool to help with that. And we'll talk about this tomorrow too. So I'll go back into gens and loads, and I'm going to clear it. So that was all just a what if type of PV thing. And let's go into one of these large generators. This will give us something to talk about over beers and later today.
Hey, Larry.
Yes.
Before you move on, like the section.
Yes, sure.
So you're going away with the host capacity. And you mentioned likelihood of PV.
Yep.
Or else we're not looking at just PV, we're looking at type of generation.
Okay.
So this is going to just look at PV, or you meant any
Yeah.
type of generation?
Any type. Yeah. So Katerina is asking if that's just for PV, and this is a slip. You're right. So we need to make a shift in our thinking and not use the word PV so much and use the word DER instead. So hopefully you'll see some areas where we are behaving well and doing that. But you can see with all these icons, we've been thinking about PV a lot, but yeah, we need to change that. So I know you all have a lot of storage and other, we've got bio generators and fuel cells and all sorts of things that clients are using. So yeah.
So that would be likelihood of DER.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll make that change then. Okay. So we'll talk about this tomorrow too. I'm putting a lot on the plate for tomorrow, huh? But the generator output, this very subtle area right here there's a lot of depth to this. And yeah, it's hard to read, isn't it? But what we're saying is that what is the rating of the inverter? So we have the capability of the solar panels, and that's these numbers up here. So this generator can output 3 megawatts. The question is how much AC power can we put out of this? So in this example, this is set to 120%. So we've simplified this label, 120%, and then we've put in this piece of text here. And so this is saying we have a 3 megawatt DC rating, and we have a 3.6 megawatt AC rating. So, a lot of you, if you're digging into this, that means that reflects how much bar capacity you have. So this thing could be running full bore, full output at 100% irradiance, generating 3 megawatts, and I still have AC or bar capability. So I can swing the power factor back and forth. I could also go the other way and set this thing to like 0.5. And now I've got, it's a percent, sorry, 50%. So at 50%, I've got 3 megawatts DC, 1.5 AC. So that means that as the sun comes up, this thing is going to ramp up, and then it's going to clip off, and I'm going to have a flat profile, and then drop back down. And so consumers like that a lot, and I think utilities do too, because you have a consistent output throughout the day. We know that the DC panels could do more, but our inverter is clipping that. So hopefully this is simplified a lot, and ready to go for this type of modeling. The EA automation stuff I'll talk about more tomorrow, but that's over here on the Forge tab. And I'm going to keep talking about, on the macros tab. Please give this thing a shot. Give us feedback. Neil has worked on the wizard here so that we have the analysis up front. We've got lots of new applications in here. And this is the tool that you can point this to your Oracle database that has thousands of feeders in it. And it'll just sit there and run through your whole system, do hosting capacity, do load flow, those types of things, and put the results into a big database for you. So if you're a utility a consultant, if you're DMVGL, this is the tool that we hope is going to be a big time saver and a key for doing automation on your system. All right, so I'll be around. Thanks for all your comments, and please talk to us. We're all here. We got Kevin here, Johnny Flynn, and Frank Ellis are here, and of course Kyle. And so we're ready to talk shop, and we'll talk as long as you want to. Thanks a lot for your attention here.